welcome to a special edition of DNET, the Disability Network. I'm Ming Wong. Over the last 10 years, there has been a steady increase in the number of people with brain injuries. Because of this, some provincial governments and private companies have focused more attention on the people who are affected. More money is now being spent on research and rehabilitation. Until quite recently, people with brain injuries were misunderstood, misdiagnosed, and often hidden away in psychiatric institutions. Today, we'll look at some recent developments, and we'll find out what the future might hold for people with acquired brain injuries.
Hard-hitting flyweights in the top 10.
I tackled a guy, and I guess I hit him a little too hard. Dive into that hole.
Brain injury. I know all about that because I was seriously hurt in a fall. My brain was injured. I ended up with permanent damage to my vision. I still need occasional support, but for some others, that support must be constant. Until recently, nobody understood the implications of brain injury. But things are slowly changing. Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario are leading the way in Canada. Diane Radunsky is a spokesperson for the Ontario Head Injury Association, who recently changed their name to the Ontario Brain Injury Association. She believes people who sustained brain injuries in the past were not given adequate follow-up treatment.
Because there was not often the skill and knowledge of understanding the effects of brain injury, they were often sent home or sent to chronic care or institutionalized in other areas without rehabilitation at all. There are a variety of people that have been misdiagnosed or not diagnosed as having brain injury, and often because they walk and talk and sound fine are having difficulties integrating back into the community. They get fired from their job, they start stealing, they may have no sexual inhibitions, which if they're charged they would land up in jail.
What is a brain injury? Well, of course, it's very complicated, but perhaps it can best be described by thinking of the brain as an office that works best when all the component parts are operating smoothly. When one component is shut down, the office still works, but without the contributions of that department.
After medical stabilization, if they were discharged from the hospital as walking and talking and looking fine, they often had characteristic changes and behavior changes that were out of their control. One of the most tragic cases I would say that's etched on my mind is with respect to the Michael Cameron family and what happened to Michael Cameron not so long ago.
I have some pictures here of Michael both before his accident and after.
June Cameron is the mother of Michael Cameron, who died in August of 1994 in Penetang Psychiatric Hospital. Paul Cameron is Michael's brother.
Michael was a happy-go-lucky kid that had lots of friends, and he was interested in sports, hockey, baseball, skiing, all that sort of thing, and worked in the summertime and in the wintertime, as well as went to school. And then basically that's about, what it was until he had his accident.
How did Michael's accident happen?
Michael was riding his motorcycle on June the 28th at 11:30 in the evening, and he hit a horse on the highway.
What year?
1975.
Okay. Where did Michael go for treatment after his accident?
First of all, he went to the local hospital, and then after a few months he was transferred to Hillcrest Hospital in Toronto, Hillcrest Rehab Place in Toronto. Mm-hmm. After that he came home, and then he went back and forth through reassessing at the Crippled Children's Center, and then he went to various other places. And then about 9 years ago, Michael went to Penetang in hopes that they could help us try and find a residence for Mike. He was having behavior problems, and he needed to, have an assessment and then have some medication to help him with the behavior problems.
You were relying on the healthcare system to give you advice for reassessment and what facilities were available for Mike, and he kept getting bounced from one facility to the next, and everyone kept doing an assessment and a reassessment. Even the professionals in the healthcare system did not know where the next move was going to be. They didn't even recommend some of the places in the U.S. Most of the places that we ended up going to were really because of constant searching for something better. And it kept leading through the healthcare system and through healthcare professionals who are supposed to know what the next step is. The system trapped him, and the system could not do anything for him because the system couldn't reconcile the logic of spending money with a facility that was most appropriate for his rehab, and that was the Anagram facility.
Ray Rempel is the founder of Anagram, a privately run rehab facility in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Rempel is also a co-founder of the Ontario Brain Injury Association.
The government refuses to use Anagram. While we have an awful lot of efficacy, we're respected internationally. In fact, our advisory committee are some of the world's best when it comes, identified as some of the world's best in brain injury rehabilitation. We have 17 participants at present, and staffing is 1-to-1, which works out to about 3.2-to-1 actually, numbers of staff. So we have, I believe, 65 staff at present. Mike Cameron visited us a couple of times last fall and this past winter, and we were really looking forward to having him here. You ask what it is, I think, that might have prevented his death. Well, I just said earlier that we're staffed 1-to-1, and that means that we work 1-to-1 with participants. And I just find it hard to believe that somebody who has difficulties with swallow and choking would, be allowed to have food without anybody present. I don't understand it.
Mrs. Cameron describes what eventually happened to Michael.
Well, from what I was told when I received the phone call was that Michael was in the cafeteria having a snack, a regulated event that they have every evening apparently. He was seen leaving the cafeteria at 9:30, and at 10 o'clock they decided that they should look for him, that they hadn't seen him around, and apparently they found him dead on the floor in the washroom at 10 o'clock.
Chinook Master Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, operates a specialized rehab service for people with acquired brain injuries. Acquired brain injury is often referred to as ABI. Chinook also sponsors, on behalf of the Ministry of Health, an out-of-country program. Patty Leonard is the coordinator of that program.
There are two types of patients who go out of country for service. Patients identified as complex or slow to recover, and patients who are identified as having severe behavior problems. We access out-of-country services when we are unable to find services within their own community or within the province in a timely way.
Why was it deemed so appropriate to spend so much money in the United States healthcare services for people with brain injuries last year? My figure is $27 million.
You're correct. We're spending $27 million a year on ABI treatment in the United States.
Nino Wisniewski is a project manager for the Long-Term Care Communication Division of the Ontario Ministry of Health.
In 1986, we had 4 people in the United States, costing OHIP $400,000 a year. Financially and medically, it made more sense to use facilities out of country. And through the years, obviously, there's been an increase in the number of cases, and there's been an increase in our OHIP payments to the United States. Now, the trend is definitely changing. We did not have much of a system in Ontario 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because we didn't have the number of patients that justified setting up a system, medically or financially. Now, seeing that the number of ABI cases has gone up, it's quite clear that we can sustain our own programs in Ontario to allow Ontarians to be treated whenever possible as close to their homes.
Why are the number of head injuries increasing anyways?
One of the biggest reasons is that today's cars have changed. We have more rigid passenger compartments for cars, we have airbags, we have anti-skid brakes, and 10 years ago or so, if you were in an accident, you were liable to be killed. In the same accident today, there's a very good chance that you will come out alive.
So then safer cars are actually resulting in more head injuries?
Well, yes, that's true, but at the same time, I'm sure safer cars are also saving more lives.
The Lake Erie Institute of Rehabilitation, or LEAR, is in Erie, Pennsylvania. It is a privately run facility that looks after people who have severe brain injuries. Some people from Canada have been sent here for treatment they could not get at home.
If you want to say no, I want you to look down.
Peter Bender is from Wingham, Ontario. Mary Green is his mother.
Peter, are you enjoying the people here at Lear?
If it's a yes, will you look up at the ceiling? Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel this type of service is not available in Canada?
I feel it's not available in Canada. Tried very hard, and at a time when our heads are so full and there's so much hurt and adjustment, it has felt as if I've just had to fight every step of the way. It was October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, 10 months before we could come here. During those 10 months while we were there, the Head Injury Association of Ontario was invaluable. They listened to me when I called many times in tears or anger or frustration when I just didn't know what to do next. While this was going on, I tried to get a list of possible rehabilitative places in Ontario. I got in my car and drove to many, phoned. It was energy draining at a time when I also needed to be with Peter. Knowing that there was help in Hamilton at Shadok, but that there weren't enough beds and that a waiting period could be years. I am getting so tired, and then it really scares me that if a day comes when I can't do this, if I get sick, then what's going to happen to Peter? So some of my energy I'm trying to channel into that now, that if I couldn't be with him and be his advocate. I see many patients who don't have an advocate, and I cry for them. Perhaps we can go home for a while, but I would really like to feel that when and if it comes, that Peter then again needs the expertise of therapists like the people here, that we would be able to find them.
Good job. 5 for 5. 5 for 5.
But how can we justify spending so much public money on private institutions in the States when we have our own private facilities in Canada?
The ministry has funded now probably 16 different brain injury rehab programs, and you know that they have no standards, no accreditation standards. There are no anybody who wants to set up a program or can write a good proposal would be eligible for government funding. So those of us who have our own money invested appear to be much more interested in outcome than those who are spending government money. I have to believe that government is going to finally recognize that, or is finally recognizing that it's where you have the outcome is where you put your money.
Well, it's true that some private companies that are not funded by the public, not funded by the taxpayers, have set up facilities in Ontario to treat people injured in road accidents and paid for by the insurance industry, the auto insurance industry. At the same time, this government strongly believes that the healthcare system in Ontario should remain publicly funded and not for profit.
Why was a person like Michael Cameron able to slip through the cracks?
I can't answer that. The coroner, it's my understanding, the coroner's office is still determining whether or not to hold an inquest into Mr. Cameron's death. And the Ministry of Health could well, if there is an inquest, could well be asked to be involved in that inquest. So I cannot say all that much, or nothing at all, about this case, about the specifics of this case. Obviously, the death of Mr. Cameron is a great tragedy, obviously.
Cheers is a government-sponsored community-based facility in Toronto. It seeks to reintegrate people with head injuries back into society. Danny Kaplan is the director of the program.
I believe there's a place for private health care services. I'm not quite sure I fully figured out exactly what that place is. The dangers of that system is, of course, the rich get healthier and the poor get poorer. And I think that we as a society, a Canadian society that is, have tried very hard in the past to maintain access to health as a right. And I think I'd like to keep that for my children.
What do you think are the biggest problems facing somebody who has a brain injury today?
I think that the biggest problem has got to be access to long-term community-based living opportunities. There's just not enough. I know of and have access to a large waiting list that tells me that people are still sitting in inappropriate places like chronic care hospitals and nursing homes where they really should have opportunities like this where they get to live a life in the community.
How did you receive your brain injury?
There's multiple stories. Sometimes I tell people that I fell off a balcony, other times I tell people that I jumped. So I'll never remember exactly how my accident happened, but to make a long story short, I fell off a balcony in London, England.
What do you see your future holding for you?
I think I'm going to be back into being more independent, earning my own money again, and just feeling good to being around other people.
Do you see your future Cheers being in your future?
Yes, they'll always be in my future.
What are the main difficulties you think you face?
The one is because I've been unemployed for over 8 years. And the second is finding a girlfriend.
In the last 5 years, there has been some progress in the area of brain injury, but there still is much to be done. The next 5 years could determine the future for thousands of people waiting to access appropriate facilities.
Patty, there doesn't seem to be any standards at present to measure how well a person is doing in their treatment for head injury. What do you feel needs to be done to rectify this situation?
Well, obviously, we need to develop some standards. And in fact, recently, and probably as we speak, it's hot off the press, there is a document called the Continuum of Opportunity document, which has been developed over the last 6 to 8 months. And one of the strong recommendations in that document is that it become a priority of this province to establish some standards and guidelines that can be used both in the private and public sector. If I could sum it up in three main recommendations, it would be that acquired brain injury is a priority in this province, that we are looking at a reinvestment of funds to the development of services within the province, and that we would establish guidelines and standards in order to develop excellent programs for individuals in Ontario.
Well, right now in Ontario, the Ministry of Health is spending $20 million on ABI. About half goes to community services, home care services, and the other half goes to hospital-based facilities. This means real expansion, and we've just recently, at the local level, asked for proposals to come into us for more community-based services. So we are going to be announcing some more expansions.
Our mandate is to provide service to individuals with brain injury, and I don't care whether the funding comes from Timbuktu. Yeah. I'm there to advocate that they get services.
Well, I would hope that Michael's death was not in vain, that hopefully it will help other people that have had head injuries to have better facilities and more support from our healthcare system. And that's really what they need.
That's our show for this week. If you need more information on acquired brain injury, or if you're looking for help for a friend or someone in your family, contact your provincial head or brain injury association. The Ontario Brain Injury Association also takes many out-of-province calls. Out-of-province callers can phone 905-641-8877. If you live in Ontario, you can reach them at 1-800-263-5404. Season's greetings from all of us at DNet. See you again next week. I'm Ming Wong. Now here's our address. Disability Network, CBC, Box 500, Station A, Toronto, M5W1E6. That's Disability Network, CBC, Box 500, Station A, Toronto, M5W1E6. Or you can fax us at 416-205-3399.